For the next 60 seconds, try not to think about your biggest fear. Try not to picture the worst case scenario that keeps you up at night. Try not to feel the emotion that situation triggers. It's difficult, isn't it? That's because these thoughts and feelings aren't random. They're deeply wired patterns in your brain, often established during your childhood years. These patterns aren't your fault, but they are your responsibility to change. The research is clear. Childhood experiences, whether traumatic or simply formative, create the invisible framework that is guiding your adult life today. Now, I'm going to show you how to recognize these patterns and give you specific techniques to break free from them. Because your future deserves much better than to be controlled by your past. Let's talk about the invisible chains, how your past can create your present story. And with this, let me share with you the story of Sarah. So every time Sarah needed to speak in a work meeting, she felt a tight knot form in her stomach. Her heart would race, and she'd often stay silent even when she had valuable thoughts to share. Now, this wasn't random anxiety she had. The reaction began in third grade when a teacher called on her to answer a question. When Sarah gave her answer, the teacher laughed and said, "That's completely wrong. Did you even read the assignment? How ridiculous is that answer?" Now the entire class burst out laughing. That single moment of embarrassment and humiliation created a pattern in Sarah's brain that would affect her for decades to come. Your brain works like this too. It forms patterns based on your early experiences. Now they become automatic responses to similar situations which trigger them. When you were young, your brain created these pathways to help you survive and belong. The problem is that these patterns don't just disappear as you grow up. They become invisible frameworks through which you see the world and make decisions as an adult. Think of them like a lens just between you and the world and how you interact with it. And whether you like it or not, it affects it. So, what makes these patterns so powerful is that most of us don't even know they even exist. They don't feel like patterns or choices, they just feel like who we are. I'm just shy. I'm not good at relationships. I always freeze under pressure. We accept these as permanent truths about ourselves rather than learned responses we can change. Now, there are four common patterns I see in almost everybody I work with. First, fear of rejection, where what holds you back from connecting deeply or showing your true self is because of past hurt. Second, perfectionism, where making a mistake feels catastrophic because your worth was once tied to your performance. Third, self-sabotage, where you unconsciously create failures to match your internal belief system about what you actually deserve or don't deserve. And fourth, social comparison, where your value is always measured against others because that's how you learned to gauge your worth. Which one feels more familiar to you? Now, research in developmental psychology shows something profound. By age 7, you've already formed many of the core beliefs that will guide your adult decisions. Isn't that remarkable? By age 7. Now, think about that. Before you could even understand what's happening, your young mind was creating the blueprint for how you're going to approach love, work, friendship, and self worth decades later. These patterns weren't created randomly. Each one was a protective mechanism your brain developed to keep you safe from emotional pain. If expressing your opinion led to mockery, your brain learned to keep you quiet. If making mistakes led to criticism, your brain learned perfectionism would protect you. Your brain was doing exactly what it was designed to, which was to protect you from all harm. The real issue isn't that these patterns exist. The problem is that they are operating without your awareness or even your consent. And now that's a big problem. They are making choices for you or on behalf of you based on outdated information from a very different time in your life. They're fighting battles that ended years back. What if you could see these patterns clearly for the first time? And what if you could understand exactly how they're limiting your life right now? Imagine being able to recognize when your past is making decisions for your present. Imagine the freedom of that awareness. So, how are your childhood experiences secretly controlling adult decisions? Through unconscious neural pathways that automatically trigger protective responses based on past pain, not your present reality. Your brain has created shortcuts. If this happens, feel this way. Do this thing. That bypasses your conscious choice. These pathways were created to protect you then, but they're limiting you now. Now that we can see these chains, let's look at how to identify which specific experiences are holding you back the most. Because once you can name them, you can begin to break them one by one and reduce the power over your future. So, recognizing your patterns is your first step for freedom. Think about the last time you walked away from something you really wanted. Maybe a job you didn't apply for, a relationship you ended early, or a project you abandoned halfway. You probably would have told yourself it wasn't the right time or that you would do it in the future. But would you consider something different? Was it truly a conscious choice, or was it your past whispering that you weren't enough? Your brain has created specific triggers and responses based on your unique life experiences. These patterns are individual as your fingerprint. The moments that shaped you, the words that hurt you, the failures that scared you off, they're all combined to create your personal response system. When something happens today that feels similar to a painful experience in your past, your brain activates the same protective patterns it created long time back. Now, what makes these patterns so difficult to see in ourselves is how normalized they become through years of repetitive behavior. They don't feel like patterns or interpretations, they just feel like truth. And now that is a very dangerous thing. This is how life works. This is what always happens to me. This is who I am. That's how you are used to facing them. They are not facts, they are your interpretations based on past experiences that your brain has accepted as reality. Let me share how Jake discovered this in his own life. Now, Jake's story is very strange. Jake always needed validation from his boss. He worked late, took on extra projects, felt devastated by even the mildest of criticism given to him. During our work together, Jake realized this pattern connected directly to his childhood. His parents only showed love and approval when he achieved something. Either it's good grades, sports trophies, awards. Their love felt conditional to Jake. And he learned that his worth always depended on his constant achievement and their approval. This childhood pattern was controlling his adult life without even his awareness. He didn't even think about it. Your body often recognizes these patterns before your mind does. So, physical symptoms are very important clues to old patterns activating. When you suddenly feel tension in your shoulders, fatigue when thinking about certain opportunities, or an impulse to avoid certain situations, your body is signaling that an old protective pattern has been activated or triggered. Now, these physical responses happen faster than conscious thought because they're connected to your survival instincts. So, it's really think of it as an instinct. It just happens. You're not even able to stop it. The science of neuroplasticity explains why these patterns are so powerful. Your brain physically changes based on these repeated thoughts and experiences. The neural pathways you use most frequently become stronger and faster. It's like turning a dirt path into a superhighway through regular use. These pathways eventually become your default responses, activating automatically before you even realize what's even happening around you. It's important to understand that these pathways aren't your fault. They were created when you were very young, with limited power and understanding of what was happening around you. Your child brain did the best it could with the information it had. But now, as an adult, you have new resources, perspectives, and new abilities. You can see these patterns for what they are, which are outdated protection mechanisms, not unchangeable truths. So, what if you could map your specific triggers and see exactly which past experience are limiting your potential right now? What if you could recognize in real time when your past is making decisions for your present? You can identify which past experiences are limiting your potential through three specific practices: tracking emotional triggers, which is noticing which such situation causes or creates your strongest emotional responses, recognizing physical responses, which is paying attention to how your body reacts in challenging situations, and connecting present reactions to past events. And this you can do through mindful self observation. When you notice yourself reacting strongly to something, pause and ask, when have I felt this way before? Often, the earliest memory of that feeling reveals the origin of that pattern. Now that you can recognize your patterns, let's explore how you reframe the belief that created them in the first place. Because seeing the cage is just the first step. Now we need to open your door. Rewriting your story, which is moving you from limiting belief to empowering truths, is a difficult thing, but it is certainly doable. Imagine if the voice in your head that said, "You'll fail like the last time," could be replaced completely with, "You've learned and you've grown since then." How would your choices currently change? What risks would you take? What dreams would you pursue? This transformation isn't just possible, it's the natural next step in freeing yourself from the past. Belief you formed in childhood becomes the foundation for how you see everything. They're like invisible glasses you worn for so long, you've forgotten they're there. These beliefs color how you see yourself, others, and what's possible in your life. When something new happens, you don't see it objectively, you see it through the lens of these early beliefs. What makes these beliefs so powerful is how true they feel to you. They've been reinforced thousands of times, perhaps, through your thoughts, experiences, and the way you interpret events through your life. They don't feel like beliefs at all, they feel like reality in itself. Now, this is why simply telling yourself to think positive rarely works. It rarely changes anything. Research reveals something fascinating about how beliefs work in your brain. They aren't stored in one specific location. Instead, beliefs exist as networks of connections that include thoughts, emotions, and even physical sensations. When you activate one part of this network, the entire pattern lights up. This is why changing a deep belief requires more than just changing your thoughts. It requires addressing the emotional and physical components too. Let me share how Maria transformed her belief, "I'm not creative at all," to something productive. Now, this belief formed when her fourth grade teacher criticized her painting in front of the class, saying it showed zero artistic talent. For decades afterwards, Maria avoided anything creative. During our chat together, Maria realized this belief came from a single person's limited perspective, not an objective truth. She began questioning the belief by asking, is it really true that I'm not creative, or did I just accept someone else's opinion pushed upon me as fact? Now she started noticing small things, that how she was able to express herself creatively in daily ways, how she solved problems naturally. How she organized her home, how she made it presentable, and even how she listened and responded to friends. Gradually, she replaced the "I'm not creative" thought with "I express creativity in my own unique way." Reframing isn't about positive thinking or denying reality, it's about questioning the validity of beliefs you formed with a child's limited understanding and then completely replacing them with a fresh new perspective from your current adult wisdom. You can certainly do this. Children often make meaning from painful experiences by concluding something is wrong with them rather than the situation in which they were placed. Your adult self can now review these conclusions with new eyes and have greater understanding. Be compassionate to yourself. This process requires that of you. These beliefs weren't random or foolish, they were only protective mechanisms that were there for one purpose, but now they're delivering a different outcome. They served a good purpose once, and they were part of reframing something. But now you've outgrown the need for this particular protection mechanism. What if you could identify and transform your core limiting beliefs? What if you could create a foundation for how you see yourself and what's possible in your life? Imagine the freedom of making choices based on present possibilities rather than past pain. You can reframe the negative beliefs that formed in your childhood through three key steps. First, question the validity by asking, is this actually true or is it just familiar? Second, examine the evidence that contradicts them. Notice examples around you that challenge this limiting belief. And thirdly, consciously create new beliefs to replace them based on your current understanding and your experience. You're basically just updating your mental operating system with more updated and accurate information. Now that you know how to reframe your beliefs, let's look at how to break the cycle completely and create lasting change. Because understanding is one thing, it's the actions that you take that ultimately free you from the past and create your authentic future. Now, breaking the cycle is not too difficult now that what you've reframed your thoughts. Creating your authentic future is now possible. What if what would you do differently tomorrow if you were free from the weight of your past? What dreams would you pursue if old fears were no longer holding you back? Take a moment to really feel the answer to these questions because this future isn't just possible, it's waiting for you to just claim it. Understanding your patterns is powerful, but it's not enough to create lasting change. Breaking free from past patterns requires more than awareness. It demands your consistent action that creates new neural pathways in your brain. That's what you want. Now, this is where many people get stuck. They understand their patterns perfectly, and they find themselves repeating the same behavior, though, anyways, wondering why knowledge alone isn't creating the change they desire. Your brain is resisting change because familiar patterns, even painful ones, feel safer than new behaviors with unknown outcomes. It's that uncertainty which our brain is nearly kind of wired not to like. This is why you might know exactly what you should do, but find yourself falling back into old patterns and behaviors again. Your brain interprets anything unfamiliar as possibly dangerous, triggering resistance that feels like anxiety, stress, procrastination, or sudden doubts overwhelming you about your new direction which you seek to walk in. The science of neuroplasticity offers real hope here. Research shows that conscious, repeated actions can create new neural pathways at any age, allowing you to literally rewire your brain. Isn't that awesome? Each time you respond differently to an old trigger, you're weakening that old bond and pattern, and but you're strengthening a new one. The brain doesn't care if your patterns are healthy or unhealthy. It simply reinforces what you practice most consistently. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Small daily actions matter more than occasional big efforts. Consistency is the key to creating new patterns that eventually become your new default responses and they become your mental operating system. Making one small change every day for a month creates more lasting transformation than a weekend workshop can do for you. Your brain changes through repetition, not intensity. Forgiveness practices open a path to freedom that many people overlook. When you hold on to resentment towards others or shame towards yourself, these emotions keep you energetically tied to past events. Now, forgiveness releases the emotional charge of past experiences, thereby making it easier for you to create new patterns without the weight of old pain. Now, this doesn't mean approving what happened to you, but it means freeing yourself from its continued power over your present choices. Visualization techniques work because your brain doesn't fully distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. Both create neural pathways, and that is the problem. When you clearly imagine yourself responding differently to triggers or living your desired future, you're actually building that neural architecture all over again in a better way, which actually works for you. The more detail and emotion you include, the more effective this practice becomes. What if you could create a new relationship with your past where it informs but no longer controls your choices and behaviors? Imagine carrying the wisdom from difficult experiences without the emotional burden. Imagine making choices based on present possibilities rather than your past limitations. You can finally break the cycle and live authentically and by consistently practicing these new behaviors which create these alternate neural pathways, using forgiveness to release emotional attachments to those past events, but also visualizing your desired future until it feels more real than your past patterns. The combination of these approaches creates a very powerful momentum towards lasting change. Your past has shaped you, but it doesn't have to define your future. The experiences that formed your limiting beliefs were real. They were not fake, they were real. But the conclusions you or your brain drew from them were created through a child's understanding. You now have the adult awareness to reinterpret those experiences and choose very different meanings and responses. Every time you make a choice that reflects who you want to be rather than who you've been, you're weakening the hold of your past. Every time you respond with courage instead of old fear, with self compassion instead of old criticism, you're creating your authentic future. This journey doesn't happen overnight, but it happens certainly, when you continue taking small steps in the direction of freedom. In conclusion, your history has shaped you, but it isn't your destiny. The patterns created in your past only control your future when they remain hidden, unknown, and unchallenged. They lose power once exposed to the light of your awareness. You can begin today. Now, see these patterns clearly, identify them, question the beliefs that created them in the first place. Take small, consistent actions that build a new future based on who you are now, not who you needed to be back then to protect yourself. Now, this work doesn't erase your past, but it can transform your relationship with it and with the memories assigned to it. Your experiences become wisdom that informs your choices rather than invisible chains that control them. You, my dear friend, deserve an authentic life created from possibility, not limitation. Thank you.